G'day everyone and welcome to another episode of the Rev Up brought to you by Crowcast. Joining me this afternoon, my son Cam. How you going, Cam?
Hello. Good. How about you?
Yeah, not too bad. Just for reference, we're doing this as a hybrid one tonight because Thursday night games. Who's got time to prepare everything? So there'll be tons of graphics so there'll be tons of graphics, etc. On the cast, but you won't see our beautiful faces because we're actually doing this remotely. So anyway, let's push on, Cam. What do you reckon we start with the Geelong team? What do you got there?
Yeah, well, if anyone's actually seen the matchups online, they'll be pretty quick to notice that it's sort of all over the place. It's like Scott's just chucked them all on the page just for the sake of them being there, but go through it anyways. So up forward, they've lined up with Ablett in the pocket, Tony Hatkins at full forward, Gary Rowan in the other pocket. Half forward line, we've got Mitch Duncan, Radaglia, and then Parfitt. Through the centre, they've got Selwood lined up on a wing, Paddy Dangerfield in the middle, and then Clark on the other wing. Their half-back line is Kolajasny, Taylor, and then their other half-back is Dalehouse. Don't actually know whether he'll line up there, though, to be honest.
Small forward.
Fullback line, O'Connor, Blitzarves, and Tommy Stewart. Their followers, you've got Rhys Stanley, Tom Hawkins. Apparently he's going to play Rock Rover. That'll be interesting. And then Tim Kelly is the Rover. On the bench, they've got Myers, Menangola, Constable, and back from injury, Lockie Henderson.
Okay.
So a couple of key emergencies there, though. Cunico and Guthrie have missed out, as well as Parsons and Abbott. So interesting there.
Well, apparently they're flying two emergencies. So I think Abbott and Cunico are on the jet. So there could be a laid out. Who knows? But they could just be playing games.
Very vastly different game plans from just the lineups themselves. I mean, you look at their forward line in the last couple of days, it's almost Richmond-esque in the mosquito fleet of Ablett, Atkins, Rowan, Parfitt.
They've had Dalehouse running through there as well.
Yeah, Tim Kelly as well. Like, you know, it's going to be, not sure how our backs are going to line up when you consider we're going to probably have Miller, Smith, McKay, Laddie, maybe Seeds, Jake Kelly and Keith Talia as well, obviously running back there with Hardigan. Like, just don't know how that's all going to line up. I mean, I know they've got Hawkins and Radaglia, so you still need your key posts back there. But I'm a little bit worried about how we're going to handle that mosquito fleet.
Well, it seems to me that Scott has decided that he's got a few guns, and rather than just put them all in the centre square and hope for the best, he's actually spreading them around a bit. We've noticed that Selwood's not playing anywhere near as many minutes at the coalface. And his average disposals have dropped as a consequence, but it's probably career preserving for Selwood. He's down to about 22, 23 posies a game, but they're arguably more effective. Danger, we know, can flick forward and kick a goal. They've been playing Tim Kelly in that coalface role so far this season with pretty good results. So, I mean, all of a sudden you're looking at a Geelong lineup that has got a lot of versatility. They've got Blitzarves and Taylor that can play at either end of the ground. The two key posts up forward. You've got Tommy Hawkins. God knows what they're going to do with Tom. And even Rhys Stanley has at times hurt us for some reason.
Times. It seems to be the only time he ever has a good game. He plays against us, and he's just like, "Oh yeah, I'm good at this level." Like,
well, he'll test the rookie because he'll make him. I mean, Rolly O'Brien's got a good tank. He's not bad around the ground. He's good in the ruck itself, but it'll be a test for O'Brien because you reckon that Stanley will test Riley O'Brien by pushing forward on occasions and try to get him one out. The Crows, predictably no unforced changes this week, so just the one with Sammy Jacobs out with the knee and Riley O'Brien getting his opportunity, which he's going to have to take with both hands. Starting at the full forward line, we've got Chase Jones, Josh Jenkins and Eddie Betts. Across half forward, we've got Sloaney, Tex and Rat. Across the middle, we got Seed, Crouchy, Matt, and Riley Knight. Halfback, we got Smithers, Tales, and D-Mac. And then fullback line with Jake Kelly, Alex Keith, and Rory Laird. Coming in and rucking is Riley O'Brien, obviously, with Bryce Gibbs and Brad Crouch named to start in the middle. And our interchange is Kyle Hartigan, Tommy Lynch, Wayne Miller and Lockie Murphy. Emergencies, Paholke, Otten, Ellis Yeoman again, and Darcy Fogarty. So no real surprises there, although I reckon they could have made a couple more, but just the one. Yeah, well, look, I mean, we've gone in with the standard, and so you pretty much know what to expect from the Adelaide Crows this week again, but I'll be interested to see how they play the three key posts down back. We've got Keith Tales and Hartigan named. I reckon, I mean, I was hoping that they might have a look at Jake Kelly's spot and perhaps think about Darcy Fogarty as an intercept defender. But that not being the case, I think they're going to have to use Alex Keith in that Tom Duday type role. It's something that we've been lacking since Tom went down. We've lacked that, that intercept player that Tom does so well. And I reckon Keith is the only one named that can really fulfill that role.
Yeah, I mean, Kelly did it a little bit when Lever was in the team, but it was only because Lever was in the team that he was able to do it.
Yeah.
Didn't do it very effectively, and he worries me every time he goes near it, going the other way, poor old Jake Kelly. But, I mean, again, we are so top-heavy back there compared to them. I mean, like I said, they've got the key posts there, but the rest of them are all mid to small. You've got Parfitt and Ryan and Ablett, who are all quick and skillful. You've got Tim Kelly as well, who isn't a slouch. Dalehouse is small and quick. We just, don't know how that's all going to line up.
And they'll run danger forward probably at least 50% of the game, you would imagine, and there's no real obvious match-up there.
Oh, you'd probably think Hartigan to take him, and that might even be why Hartigan got a gig, to be honest, because Hartigan did a reasonable job on him, I think, the last time he played him.
Yeah.
From memory, or maybe the time before. I know he has taken him in the past, and he seems to be an okay matchup for him. I mean, Cheney was the other one that we used to pick on him.
I think he's got a game for Harndorf this week, though.
Yeah, good on him. I might go watch him instead. But yeah, I'm very, very worried about how that forward and back matchup's going to look, especially because Geelong seem to be playing their cards pretty close to the chest about how they're actually going to line up altogether, because it doesn't seem to be pretty true to what they've put on the page so far.
So, I mean, I guess our midfield is our strength as usual. We have good cold-face players, and I reckon we'll, unless a Dangerfield or a Kelly gets off the chain, you would imagine it's going to be a fairly even situation in terms of contested ball. And where we've lacked in the first two games, particularly against Hawthorn, is our ball use on the outside. We haven't been very constructive. Yep. We've been limited in terms of how we've been able to stretch the defence. Playing a bit up and down the line. We kind of got a bit more patient against Sydney, I felt, and just picked our way through a little bit better, and were able to stretch them a little bit after quarter time. But, Hawthorn played a very Geelong-esque style of game against us, I reckon. Geelong guard the corridor against us consistently, and we find it difficult to get any sort of spread happening against Geelong, and they tend to force us to kick long and stick, marking players behind the ball. So that's something that we're going to have to work through, and I don't know whether we're in the form to do it at the moment.
I think we've beaten them the last two times we've played them. So I'm just checking that now. Yeah, so the final that you talked about was in 2017. We beat them by 61 points, and then that was at Adelaide Oval, obviously. Time before that, we beat them by 21 points. So they haven't beaten us the last three times we've played them. So they've actually struggled against us in recent times. But like we sort of already touched on, a bit of a different team that we're coming up against. And they're almost positionless. I agree with what you're saying with, he seemed to have spread his stars around a bit. He's pushed Ablett out. He's pushed Mitch Duncan back to half back or on the half forward line. He's spread Dalehouse out of there as well. They almost play a positionless type of game. And I think that you're right that I just don't know if we're in the form to be able to match it. I think that the mental demon might get Geelong a little bit because they have struggled recently against us, and it'd be interesting whether we capitalise on that or not. But going forward is a major issue for us. I did think that the key to our ball movement is that handball and that run and create. But when that's not there, we look very, very average.
Yeah, and you can bet your life that they're going to sit on Lairdy and probably Brodie Smith as well, or Seeds, depending on who's getting off the chain. The stat that really jumps out at me is Geelong's average tackle count so far this season, 78 tackles so far this season on average. And I think that's directly contributed, and you said this to me earlier today when we were talking about it, the inclusion of Dowhouse and Gary Rowan has added a real defensive flavour, well, not so much a defensive flavour, but a real aggressive sort of in-your-face sort of defensive pressure to the Geelong team that we're not really used to.
Yep. Oh, and don't forget Ablett and Tony Atkins down there, who's a new player as well. Parfitt can tackle. Radigali is not a slouch either. He can still run and chase. 100% agree. And it's very Richmond-esque as well in that respect. They seem to have adopted that style. It's almost like Scott's gone, you know what we're doing isn't working. Let's emulate what's working in the competition at the moment. Drafted accordingly, got rid of a couple of folks like Menzel and whatever to sort of unclog those positions that they had down forward, and it's definitely a new look. It's working, but it's a good challenge. I think that if we rock up and we establish ourselves early, it'll go a long way to sort of rattle them and their cage and sort of bring up past experiences for them when they've played against us. But if we come out lackluster, they'll walk all over us.
Yeah, interestingly, I mean, both games that they've played so far this season, they haven't sort of outnumbered their opposition in terms of inside 50s or anything like that. Their inside 50s numbers haven't been huge. Certainly, Melbourne had plenty of inside 50s, but just don't have a forward line at the moment. And Collingwood certainly kicked themselves out of contention in the first half when they were 4-9 or something at half time. Yeah, could have easily been 9-4, and a different story. So it's not as if Geelong are getting huge numbers in terms of forward 50 entries. What they seem to be doing better is limiting the opposition score a little bit better and creating a little bit more rebound out of defence. So I think the key for us is clean forward 50 entry. And, as I mentioned before, I was hoping that they would consider Ben Davis coming in for Tommy Lynch. I think Lynchy is really under the gun at the moment to perform. And everyone knows that we go through Tom Lynch on transition. I think
we do anymore, though, to be honest. Sorry to cut you off there. I just don't think we do. Well, I think the reason is, and we sort of touched on it, is because I don't think he's got any space anymore.
Well,
apart from the fact that teams have cottoned onto it, the zone has moved back from the kick out, and that's when he normally gets on the end of it, is when we're transitioning from back to forward.
Yeah. I don't think he's necessarily putting himself in good positions either. And the thing with Tom is that he relies on his engine, and when he doesn't have space to work in, things become a little bit dicey for him. But we do, as a consequence of having him, Walker and Jenkins as our three tools, I guess you'd say, in our forward line, there's a bit of a sameness about it. We didn't see anything from JJ until he went onto the ball last week, and then all of a sudden he remembered that he was playing game footy.
It makes you wonder, though, is it because of that, or is there a directive that he doesn't understand?
Well, I wonder if Ben Hart's telling him to play from behind deep in the forward line, then Ben Hart needs to be fired.
Yeah, I get that part, but he's always been a little bit, hey, going in the contest. But I just find it very strange that you've got a bloke that last year really asserted himself when he was the man, and he was it, because everyone else was either injured or out of form. And then you've got this year when we've got everyone back and supposedly fit, and he goes back into his shell again. I just wonder whether there's some sort of structural or game plan that he doesn't suit or something, because it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't.
Yeah, no, it doesn't, because he's back to the 2016 Jenkins, really.
Yeah.
And
don't get it.
I can't see any directive that would say to JJ to, maybe not try to go so hard for the ball. I think we all thought that his season last year, that was the biggest improvement in his game. The fact that he was contesting a little bit more, the fact that he was trying to make the most of 50-50 situations. But so far this season, he seems to have gone back to that whole laconic, if the ball's not coming in on my terms, then I've just sort of given up kind of thing. And
that doesn't explain when he goes into the middle, he goes at it hard.
No, well, that's right. Well, I think it's confidence, or it's either confidence or concentration, because I think what happened when JJ went into the ruck, he all of a sudden got into the game. And I think when he's playing up forward, if he doesn't get some early ball, or if a couple of contests don't go his way, I have the feeling that he might just drop his head a bit.
Yeah, maybe. Well, it's probably because you and everyone else just decides to bash him as soon as he does something bad. So
I'm sure he listens to me. Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, but I mean, all jokes aside, JJ really needs to step up, because without any sort of physicality and contest in the air from Jenkins, all of a sudden there's a sameness to our forward line. And I guess that's where I was hoping that maybe they might have a think about Ben Davis, just to provide a little bit of X factor. There's no doubt in my mind that we're missing Mitch McGovern, because what Mitch forced opposition teams to do is to be accountable on McGovern, which takes an extra defender. As it stands at the moment, we saw it with Sicily in week one in particular, that they were able to sag off their man with a fair amount of confidence, because we don't have a lot of marking options up forward. So, and there's plenty of players in the Geelong side that can play that third man up, floating across the front sort of situation. And unless we've got someone that can sort of break it open a little bit with a bit of X factor, then there's a very much a sameness to our forward, our key position forwards. And I don't think our current lineup is the solution in the form that they're in at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, you look at their back line, like you say, you've got Tom Stewart, split halves. Colin Jasney is at least a mid-size. He's not a small. Harry Taylor, obviously, as well.
Yep.
Who else floats back there? And then you've got Lockie Henderson.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they've got plenty of tall power there.
Yeah, and they actually line up really well on us in that respect. Look, with the Jenkins thing, I was listening to you guys talk last night about how we've got a few rusted on players there. I actually think Jenkins and Lynch as well are actually in a bit of danger of losing their spots, because I don't think they're going to put up with that all year. Genuinely don't.
History will tell you that they will, Cam. Don Pike is big on continuity and backing blokes in. And when was the last time Tommy Lynch got dropped on form? I don't think it has been since he's been playing.
But this is probably the first time it's been warranted that he needs to be dropped on form, really, because last year he's in and out of the side due to injury, and you could probably say that they were just trying to put him on the park because we didn't really have much option anyway. The year before, he was in awesome form, so he had no need to be dropped.
Yeah.
Jenkins has been dropped before when he was struggling. I genuinely think that those two are in serious trouble, and it's also interesting that Lynch is actually lining up on the bench. He doesn't normally line up on the bench from memory, does he?
No, not usually. They've stuck Rory Sloane on the field at half forward. I don't mind Rory going forward, and we can take these lineups with a pinch of salt, really. But I guess the other issue with our forward line, I think, at the moment is that we're not getting anything out of Eddie Betts. We've got two sort of defensive smalls there in Jones and Lockie Murphy when he's there as well, and they've combined quite well defensively, but they're not hitting the scoreboard. I mean, Chase looks like he might, and with an ounce of luck, he would have had a couple last week. Yeah. But we're not getting enough of it out of our small forwards. So all of a sudden you've got a situation where Tex isn't hitting the scoreboard, Jenkins isn't hitting the scoreboard, Eddie's not hitting the scoreboard, and we don't really have a midfield that hits the scoreboard. We might get one from Rat, we might get one from Seed. Sloaney kind of hasn't really hit the board for a while. Riley Knight bobs up now and again, but we don't really have a prolific goal-kicking midfield, if you know what I mean. Bryce Gibbs is playing behind the ball at the moment. Matt and Brad Crouch don't really, they're not goal kickers. They might bob up now and again.
What are you talking about? Brad Crouch is leading our goal kicking. Get around him.
Yeah, we've only kicked about 20 goals for the season so far.
Hey, mate, still leading it. Leave him alone.
Well, the fact that Brad Crouch is leading our goal kicking, it kind of sums up what we're talking about regarding the forward line, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, proves the point, really. I mean, and you're right. And look, I get really bullish when people start talking crap about Tex, but I do understand what you're saying as well. He's not hitting the scoreboard. And when you're a centre-half forward, you'd need to at least be kicking 1 or 2 goals a game. And look, if he kicked straighter, he probably would have had 3 or 4 against Sydney as well. So there is that. I think he kicked 1 goal 3 or something like that.
Yeah, something like
that. But took a lot of shots from 50 and out, which I don't mind because that's his range. But bit of a sticky one. We want to get into some form soon because, like I said, a couple of those boys will lose their spots. I've got a feeling.
Yeah,
I don't put up with that. If we start losing and we're getting hammered by media and all sorts of stuff because the list is fit and we're still crap, something will give eventually.
Well, if the list is fit and we're still crap, what it means is it's time to flip it a bit. And Pete made a really good point on Tuesday night, saying that the mirror of our forward line in the twos is Himmelberg, Fogarty, Ben Davis. They're the 3 tools that we've got in the twos, and we've got Stengel as a small forward. So at the moment, you would argue that there's a case to be made for at least 2 of those players. Ben Davis has to be in consideration. He's fit. He's playing decent footy. Tyson Stengel has kicked 10 goals in 3 games or something like that. But 2 bags of 4. And yes, there's question marks about his fitness. But we
don't have to run around in the forward 50.
Well, we've got defensive smalls, so we can we don't rely on Eddie Betts for forward 50 pressure, although it's not too bad in that regard. But I think we can afford to have a bloke running around whose sole job it is to kick goals, and Tyson Stengel is certainly putting his hand up for that. Yeah,
and look, you've got Atkins. I know he runs on the wing or whatever, but he doesn't put any forward pressure on the half forward there. You've got Eddie Betts, who I would disagree. I actually think he puts more pressure acts on than people give him credit for. Chase Jones, obviously, is a bit more defensively minded. Riley Knight, definitely defensive pressure player. Lockie Murphy, defensive pressure player. So you've definitely got people there that can pick up the slack. And
but none of them are hitting the scoreboard hard, though, Cam. That's my point.
Yeah, no, I'm agreeing with you. What I'm saying is you can afford to have someone like him in there because you've got the other blokes that are doing the other side of the game plan for him.
Yeah.
So that you've got blokes that can pick up his, ineffectiveness going the other way.
Yeah. Now I want you to talk to me again about what you were talking to me about earlier with regards to Geelong's forward pressure and what that means for their defence and how they set up. You were saying to me that because they're so good defensively now in the forward line that it makes a difference to how they set up.
Yeah, well, basically it means that before the knock on them was that they had a star-studded midfield, but star-studded midfield was pretty notorious for not being able to run defensively. So what it means now is because they've got such good defensive pressure up forward, the midfielders don't have to do shit going the other way because it allows the backs to set up properly. They squeeze the ball coming out. The zone sets up and they trap it defensively that way. So the mids can just basically run for end as they please.
Yeah.
And when your mids are Dangerfield, Selwood, Duncan, not really Ablett anymore, Dalehouse, Tim Kelly, it's a pretty scary midfield to be running around without much accountability.
Yeah, it's a really good point because I reckon I certainly am probably guilty of underestimating Geelong pre-season. But when you look at... Yeah, well, you're probably a better judge than me. Look, I must admit that I just felt that their list was past it and I didn't really see the players coming through. But they've kind of taken a line from Hawthorn's approach. They just keep trading for need. And I think their trades of Dalehouse and Rowan have been fantastic for them, and it's changed the whole nature of that team. I point back to the tackle count. Their numbers are completely different to the Geelong sides of 3 or 4 years ago, yes, they've had a couple come through, but a lot of it has been just on solid trading. So I guess you got to give credit, and they're still in contention. With the stars they've got around the ball at the coalface, they're always going to be a threat.
Yep. And so you couple the acquisitions of Rowan and Dalhouse, who have just looked like completely different players moving clubs. Dalhouse is obviously really unhappy at Western Bulldogs, and now he looks obviously a lot freer between the years. Gary Rowan's probably just enjoying playing for a team that doesn't just want to play defensively the whole time.
Yeah.
But then you've also got Ablett, who's reinvented himself back to a small forward again, like he did at the start of his career. That's all of a sudden you've got three really quality small forwards that they didn't have last year.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it was very much Tom Hawkins playing a lone hand with a bit of Menzel when he could get around it.
Yep.
And now they're multi-dimensional. And you're right. I think it's a difficult matchup, and I don't know whether our selection is appropriate. I mean, if you look at specifics, you've got D-Mac, Brodie Smith and Rory Laird, who aren't renowned as being accountable defenders. And I think there's too much danger with their small forwards to have unaccountable defenders. And I think by forcing Lairdy and McKay and those blokes to be accountable down back, it just stops all our run. We rely on being able to get Rory off the chain and be able to get Smithers off the chain. And, those blokes are going to have to be accountable against this forward line or else we're just going to get burnt in the scoreboard.
Well, who are we actually looking at as our matchups? Like, we're actually going to have to play Jake Kelly on one of them. We really are.
Yeah.
Because I don't see how we're not going to be able to. You don't want to put Miller on him. You wouldn't put Smith on him. You're not going to put Keith or Hardigan on him. You're not going to put Talia on him. You're not going to put D-Mac on him. You're not going to put Laird on him.
Yeah.
So that leaves Jake Kelly. And Jake Kelly on Gary Ablett is genuinely scary.
Yeah, well,
anxiety.
Yeah. Do you reckon they might try a specific matchup like, say, a Bryce Gibbs?
No, I reckon they're going to try and do the whole team defense thing. I don't think they're going to try and play specific matchups. That's the feel that I get from the team that they've selected. I feel like they're going to try and trap them by putting a number behind the ball when they can and using Keith as that third man up. If the ball hits the deck, they're just going to back their ball winners to win the ball more than what the Geelong small forwards are. I think that's all they're going to try and do.
Yeah,
because I don't see how they're going to go about it unless they decide to put someone like a Riley Knight on him. But
Riley Knight was the other one.
The job on Selwood. Knight doesn't get the job on Selwood, so
Selwood may not need a tag because he hasn't been getting as much of the ball. I don't mind Riley Knight on Ablett. But I reckon what we're going to have to see, what we're going to have to do in order to have a chance, in my opinion, is our mids are going to have to push back a bit harder than they have in the past few games. I think they're going to have to work a lot harder and run a lot harder both ways and get a little bit deeper into defence because the way I see the matchup at the moment, there's too many options for Geelong.
Yeah. And look, to be honest, them working back harder wouldn't be a bad thing because then it's just going to give more space to our lead-up forwards, which is our strength. And to be honest, the only way we're going to win this game is if we actually back ourselves and handball through that stupid little zone that Geelong put down the middle of the ground.
Yeah.
And when we handball, we cut teams apart. I don't know why we're scared to do it. It's like we put it in the queue rack after 2017 because everyone was telling us that we're too attacking and we need to have a plan B. But then we turned our plan A into like a morph of a plan A and a plan B and just called it plan A.
Yeah. The other thing we don't do anymore, we don't kick diagonally, which is the way to get... Because, Geelong basically set up... I've watched Geelong set up against us and they basically, on transition, they will basically have 3 or 4 players on the wing line of the centre square and they would just refuse to let you into the corridor, force you to go down the line and get you the other way. And the way getting through that with handball is difficult because they can just fade across. You've got to be able to hit up a 20-metre diagonal pass and get it through that line and then get it out over to the other side. And it's something that we haven't really been willing to do so far this season. We did a little bit against Sydney, but it was very forced and predictable.
I actually disagree with you a bit on the handball thing, because the whole reason you handball is you run in numbers and you draw players. So by handballing through the zone, yes, you have not a greater likelihood, but a bit more of a dangerous likelihood of turning the ball over. What it does is it draws that man out of the zone. And if you've got mates running next to you, you just keep handballing between you. And that's what we used to do in 2017.
Yeah.
We'd run the ball, we'd draw the player, pass to the next guy, then the other guy would come up and there'd be bodies flying everywhere. It'd be fantastic. But that's how you get through a zone like that. You can't, if you kick to a player in between them, all they have to do is chop the ball off. Whereas if you've got people running, at least you still have numbers at the footy if it does spill, or if someone does get tackled or whatever.
It's not so much kicking to a player in between them, it's kicking to a player behind them. It's getting blokes behind that line on the wing side that they set up.
That's a hard kick to be able to nail someone.
Yeah, but we've got the blokes. So we've got Seaman and Smith that can hit those passes. We've got Smith that can hit a 40-metre pass diagonally from a half-back flank, and it's a dangerous kick. But when you look at how Geelong set up and where their numbers are always centre side of where of the flank that the ball's on. So
yeah,
you can run through, absolutely, but you're not going to get them as out of position as if you can ping something over 30-odd metres, and then you've got 2 or 3 players out of position because Geelong do stack the side of the ground that the ball's on. Anyway, it's going to be very interesting because it's a different Geelong side, I think, to what we've seen in the past. And, I don't think history counts for much in this particular game because Geelong seem to be travelling pretty well. I think they're playing with a bit of enjoyment, because it is a new game style that they've put on the park, and that, that fresh thing that happens when footy players are given something new to do. Whereas I think with Adelaide, it's very much same old, and just back the system. Don Pike came out today and said specifically, that he expected that our team tactics would cover for the loss of Source. And now that just tells me that we're just back in our structures and back in our systems, and we don't seem to be the type of club that wants to address what the opposition is doing. And it has cost us in key games. It cost us in round 1 against Hawthorn. Really, I didn't see us address any of Sydney's strengths. I think Sydney just played badly and we happened to grind it out a bit better than them. But I don't see this team hasn't been selected with Geelong in mind. This team has been selected to execute Adelaide's game plan.
Oh, yeah, and that's just typical Pike, though, isn't it? His greatest asset can also be his greatest weakness. He's very arrogant's a strong word, but it's probably right in the way he believes things should be done, which is great. But also comes a time where it's like, you keep bashing yourself against a brick wall and wondering why your head's bleeding. Well, then, not really helping anyone, is it?
Yeah. Well, look, I said on Tuesday night that the selection of D-Mac in round 1 was a bit of a sign, and I thought that what they did at selection this week would be another sign, and it certainly has been from my point of view. This is basically the team and the structure that we're going to be running through the season with, and I think Pike and the coaching staff are just backing the team to improve and to gain form. And I agree. We saw that this team at its best can make a grand final. I wonder whether this team is still at its best, and whether the game hasn't moved on a bit from that style of play. And I don't know whether we've actually moved with the game. I mean, even our kickouts. I don't see us at any stage trying to exploit the new kick-out rule. And I'm not saying that we should do it every time, but it seems to me that we're using the kick-outs exactly the same as we have in the past, whereas we've seen other teams try different tactics.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, just touching on what you're saying, I think that we might be a little bit overrated our list.
Oh, yeah.
At times. Yeah. I think that 2017 was a bit of a perfect storm. We had a few teams that were at the top with us the year before that fell away. I don't think we necessarily got much better. I just think that we got a bit crisper with the way we did things. And I think that we employed that sort of kamikaze style of play, and it just took a few teams by surprise. But you saw by the end of the year, they pretty much figured us out.
Well,
and,
Richmond certainly had.
Games.
Richmond
there's a few other
had.
teams that did as well. Like, we got pumped by North Melbourne, for God's sake.
Yeah, they can do that too. Though I agree with you, though. I think.
The point I'm trying to make is that I think that at times we've probably overrated where these guys are at, and since everyone else has caught up, you couple that with a bit of a horrendous year last year with injuries or whatever, it's made us look a little bit more ordinary than what I think a lot of us thought. But yeah, and you couple that with maybe Pike not willing to try new or different things or throw the team around or whatever. You chuck that all in together, and this is what you get.
Yeah, I agree with you, mate. And, this is probably our last real big test for the next 3 or 4 weeks. Our draw softens up a little bit after this week, and there's a good chance that even if we drop this game, we could end up being, 5-3 or 6-2 after 8 rounds, just the way the draw pans out. A lot of home games coming up. So, and it is early days, and, the real stuff happens after the bye, and the first half of the season seems these days to be all about just banking wins. But, I'd just like to see us use this first half of the year just to give a few blokes a run. I understand that Greenwood hasn't been getting a run because he's not fit. Galucci's not fit yet, but Cam Ellis-Yeoman, 3 weeks in a row, emergency.
Yeah, poor bloke. I mean, he got a good run last year, and I actually thought we were going to trade him because his stock was up, but kept him around. Obviously, want him as insurance. He's going to be a professional emergency for the rest of his career by the looks of it.
Well, and it does him a disservice, and I'd actually rather have Cam Ellis-Yeoman in there than Tommy Lynch at the moment. Yeah,
well, again, Tommy Lynch's spot is definitely under the scope.
Yeah.
And the thing, sort of going back to what you're saying about our draw and whatever, if we drop this game and we get the same sort of lackluster, stagnant sort of game that we've gotten from the last couple of weeks, you'd almost want them to drop a couple of the easy games that we've got coming up after that, because I don't think that if we drop this week's game that it'll send off warning signs in the coach's box. And I think that when we've got this soft draw coming up, it's going to be a trap that we may fall into that, we've done better than what we should have, if that makes sense.
And look, Let's fire up a bit, because we actually want the team to perform, and we're talking about the downside. But if Tex starts hitting up on his leads, if Josh Jenkins starts presenting better, if we can get a couple of goals out of Eddie and our other small forwards, and if we can limit their scoring down back, then we're in with a very good shot. I think we match up very well with them in the midfield. I think we'll break even at the contest. And I think our tall defenders will hold their own. So really, for me, the two keys of the game are
on the ground.
Can we get enough goals out of our forward 50 entries, and can our small to medium defenders hold their small to medium forwards? They're the two keys for mine.
I actually think that we're going to be unlikely to see any goals out of our key posts. I think we're going to be seeing goals from Atkins, Eddie, Riley, Seeds, Brad Crouch again. I haven't seen any signs. Maybe Tech this time around. I think that those are where we're going to get our goals from, and the game's going to be turned into a bit of a slog, especially if Geelong get their defensive setup correct. So I think those boys that I just mentioned there are going to be pivotal to our scoring, because I don't see where we're going to get it from anywhere else. Hopefully Chase Jones finds his radar and kicks a couple, because he definitely deserves it.
Yeah.
After a few wayward attempts.
Yeah, I agree. And hopefully the next time he has a set shot, the senior players can get around him and settle him down. People listening to this are probably just about getting ready for the first bounce pretty soon. So what's your tip?
Better judgment. I'll go against Crows by 14 points.
I'm doing the same thing. The only thing that tips me in favour of the Crows is the fact that the Cats are coming off a 5-day break, and they played on a bit of a wet deck, and Geelong haven't played off a 5-day break for a long while, so they may be caught a little bit slow.
Yeah, and they also I think that's wishful thinking. I'm sort of banking more on the they haven't travelled to Adelaide Oval very well the last 3 times we've played them. There's a few bad memories there for them.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that we get on top of them early, like we did in that final and like the few other times that we've played them, where we just absolutely felt them on the inside. And hopefully that sort of gets the game going from there. Because I think that, like I said earlier in the cast, that if we don't come out breathing fire, they will absolutely steamroll us.
Yeah, I think you're right, mate. They get the first couple on the board and it's going to be a long night, I reckon.
Yeah, I just need Riley Knight to go in there and absolutely freaking snot someone, just to get them going.
All right. Well, look, it'll be very interesting for those listening. The first bounce won't be too far away. So thanks very much for listening and watching. And thanks, Cam, for joining me tonight. We hope you've enjoyed tonight, and we will see you on Sunday evening for the wrap. Good night, everyone.
See ya.